Let's get to our 5 headlines. All right, let's begin with this because we're going to see and hear a lot of this in the coming weeks. Here is Allison Camerata on CNN talking about what she thinks will happen if Roe v. Wade is overturned. Listen.
I think one of the interesting discussions about abortion is that the country is generally divided. I mean, almost split right in half about how they view it. However, in the latest Gallup polls, 20% of the country, only 20% of the country wants to outlaw it. Okay, so you can feel differently about the different nuances of it, but only 20% wants to outlaw it. And that's ultimately, obviously what would happen if Roe versus Wade were done away with. And so it's just interesting. I mean, obviously we're segueing into a political stance here, but if the country does, would support the direction that this is going in.
Well, this is why when Republican presidents nominate justices to the court, they try to pretend that it's some mystery what their views are about Roe versus Wade because they know the country is against them on this issue.
Yeah, so Allison Camerata is either stupid or lying, or she could be both. I don't mean to limit her. Okay, I don't want to limit the possibilities here. But no, overturning Roe would not mean that abortion is outlawed. Okay? In fact, if Roe was overturned, the next day, abortion is still going to be legal everywhere. The laws are not directly affected at all by overturning Roe v. Wade. No, what it would do is it would make it possible for individual states to pass laws that would then restrict or possibly ban the practice. It enables them to do it. It doesn't mean that it happens. And some will do that. Some states will pass laws like that. Some won't. Does Camerata think that California and New York are going to ban abortion because Roe is gone? No. If anything, they're going to pass laws that just encourage it even more in retribution. Only the very strongly and overwhelmingly conservative states will ban the practice. I think what's going to happen, what's going to, you're going to have a few states that ban it outright, a few states that, like I said, go even further in the other direction. I think what's going to happen in the majority of states is that you're going to find more restrictions. And that's in line with what most Americans feel and what their opinion is of the practice. Now, of course, when it comes to something like this, it doesn't matter how most Americans feel about it. This is a basic human right that is being infringed upon. You've got 60 million dead babies since Roe v. Wade. I don't care if every single American in the country loves it. It still should be banned, and if we could ban it across the country, I would be in favor of doing that. But that's just not the reality. That's not what we're talking about here. You would need something like a constitutional amendment protecting the personhood rights of unborn children, which I would favor. But we're not anywhere close to that happening. Roe v. Wade simply allows states to make choices. And that's, if Americans can be made to understand this, then I think the majority would be in favor of overturning Roe v. Wade. But keep this in mind. I don't know what the polls say, but you're going to see a lot of polls. How do Americans feel about overturning Roe v. Wade? Whenever you read those polls, keep in mind that a large number of the people taking the poll don't actually know what overturning Roe v. Wade means. And a lot of them are going to think that it means exactly what Allison Camerata says, because that's what the media is telling them. Okay, number 2, take a look at this. This happened at a car dealership in the Bronx. So that's a gang fight that broke out at the car dealership. But if you're listening to this on the audio podcast, it's at a car dealership. Bullets start flying, and at the bottom of the screen, there's a dad sitting on a couch, I guess in the waiting room with looks like 3 or 4 kids. And as soon as the bullets start flying, he lays on top of the kids, shielding them from the bullets. Actually, he took a bullet in the thigh. I believe he's going to be okay. His kids are okay. If he hadn't been laying on top of them, who knows where that bullet would have gone. But you see, I think with this footage, you see sort of the heights and depths of masculinity, the contrast. Really, it's real masculinity versus fake masculinity. And you see both of those things illustrated in that video. And, certainly in our culture, we could use We could use a lot more of the kind of masculinity that you saw, which is real authentic masculinity, the kind that you saw happening there playing out at the bottom of the screen. That's what we could use a lot more of in this country. Number 3, the media today is very disturbed, very troubled, very, very troubled. So deeply troubled because Trump made a joke at his rally last night about a reporter being thrown to the side by cops. Let's listen to that.
They grabbed him. They were grabbing him left and right. Sometimes they grab one guy. I'm a reporter. Get out of here. They threw him aside like he was a little bag of popcorn. But I mean, honestly, when you watch the crap that we've all had to take so long, when you see that, it's actually, you don't want to do that, but when you see it, it's actually a beautiful sight. It's a beautiful sight. And they had the same thing on some other streets, and the whole thing was gone, and I haven't heard of any real problem in Minneapolis since that happened. I mean, they were just burning down the city, and that idiot was standing there. This is a friendly protest, and behind him was like 10 blocks of fire.
Now, I have to agree, that is extremely troubling, I think. I am also disturbed by that. I mean, Trump says they threw him aside like a bag of popcorn. That is no way to treat a bag of popcorn. The fact that Trump thinks of popcorn as a thing that you throw to the side, what kind of analogy is that? Throw to the side like a bag of pop? Who throws their bag of popcorn to the side? So if I give you a bag of popcorn, you're just going to toss it to the side? That's not. I mean, is that what he does at a movie theater? They hand him his large popcorn and he just chucks it over like that? I think this statement from Trump reveals a really problematic attitude about popcorn. And that is a national conversation that I think we need to have. Number 4, New York Post has this story. I think this has already been announced, but here it is again. It says, actor Jim Caviezel, who played Jesus in 2004's The Passion of the Christ, said writer-director Mel Gibson has written a forthcoming sequel. Mel Gibson just sent me the third picture, the third draft. It's coming. He told Breitbart it's called The Passion of the Christ Resurrection. It's going to be the biggest film in world history. While Caviezel, 51, may talk a big game, the first film was no slouch, made on the relatively modest budget of $30 million. It took in $622 million worldwide. Let's see. And then it says, so what the new film, the actor said, would depict his Jesus's biblical resurrection and the events that followed. Now, yes, first of all, biggest film in the world. I think that could very well be the case. This movie is going to make $1 gazillion. Passion of the Christ made $622 million. And keep in mind, and that's not even adjusted for inflation, but also keep in mind that was a movie that was rated R. Not really a kid friendly, not a movie you're going to bring like your 8-year-old to, right? Because it's pretty gruesome. Now it is actually what happened to Christ, so I think it's a great film, but not for very young kids. If we're doing Passion of the Christ, Resurrection, then probably it's going to be a little bit more family friendly. It's not going to be quite as gruesome, I would think. This is a Mel Gibson film, so you never know. And so if it's not rated R, so you're taking a Bible movie, not rated R, made by a mainstream and great film director in Mel Gibson, I think that's a $1 billion movie at least, for sure. My only question though is how much, so what I've read in the past is that this movie it's going to tell the story of Jesus, his resurrection up to the ascension. And that's going to be the whole movie. Now, if we were going into the book of Acts and we were, and Mel Gibson is showing us what's going on with Peter and Paul, that would be obviously a great film, and I would love to watch that movie. I'm just wondering if there's enough biblical material between resurrection and ascension to make a movie, because the Gospels cover that in like 4 sentences. So if that's the time frame we're covering, then Mel Gibson's going to have to freelance quite a bit and add in a lot. So that could get a little dicey. But I think it's great, and this is it kind of shows you how much Hollywood hates Christians, that they're not making Bible movies, like 5 Bible movies a year, because these movies make a ton of money. There's a huge audience for them, even when they're not good. Mel Gibson makes a great one. Some of the Bible movies we get aren't even good. They still make a ton of money. There's a huge, hungry audience for this material. And yet, for the most part, unless Mel Gibson comes along, mainstream Hollywood is not making these movies. with a few exceptions. Okay, 5. Finally, rioting in Portland continued last night, as always. But then the Antifa rioters took a break from the rioting for a little musical interlude. Actually, they started moshing. At least that's what this is supposedly is a video of. But you tell me. Let's take a look.
I do not know this cultural tradition at all.
Okay, that is not a mosh pit. First of all, that's more like a tickle fight, a tickle pit, if you will. Tickle pits, by the way, would be a great name for maybe an indie band. But that video really just underscores the important point that I always like to highlight, which is that Antifa are domestic terrorists, yes, but they're also enormous dorks. And let's never lose sight of that. Never forget that. These are the saddest, flabbiest, scrawniest, most awkward, weakest, most pathetic little punks you'll ever encounter in your life. But then when a bunch of them have crowbars and bricks and stuff, yes, they're dangerous. Of course, you could give a whole bunch of 12-year-old cheerleaders crowbars and bricks, and they would be dangerous too. So you could give that to toddlers, and they'd be dangerous also. That's not really telling you anything about the toughness of the individual people. Individually, they're exactly what you saw right there. But a whole big group of them, yeah, they are terrorists and they are dangerous. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right down there so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.